Come here. Get off. Today we're talking to Chloé Cook. Chloe provides couples and family therapy from an emotionally focused perspective that helps her clients improve their communication skills, work through trust and fidelity issues, and build a healthy foundation that fosters supportive partnerships. Chloe also helps folks in their relationships and address sex and intimacy issues, including orgasm difficulties, unmatched and low desire, performance anxiety, and sexual empathy. Chloe, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm so
Yeah,
excited.
me too. Before we get into the interview, as we always do, we always ask what your pronouns are.
My pronouns are she and her.
Awesome. Ours are
Thank
awesome.
you.
Yeah.
So, we'd like to start by asking all of our interviewees, tell us what you do in regular ass words.
Well, I am a marriage and family therapist. So I help couples. I also help individuals, though, and families with life transitions, personality disorders, anxiety, things of that nature, in order to help live a better life.
Word. So, how did you start out as a therapist? Like, how did you come to this work?
Okay, so actually, this is a second career for me. I
Mm,
actually was an accountant and I worked for a really large corporation
wow.
and I was unhappy. I was unfulfilled. I always felt like I was supposed to be somewhere else
Mm.
doing something, helping people. And I just would think back to when I was in middle school and high school, I would always tell my friends that I was going to be a therapist. And
Really?
specifically when I it's so weird. I remember telling my friends that I'm going to be a therapist. And specifically when I got to high school, I don't know why I sorry guys. I don't know why I specifically started telling people I was going to be a sex therapist. I
Ah.
think it was because I saw Dr. Ruth, a show with Dr. Ruth on it, and I was like, I want to do that.
You're like, I can do what this
I
white
love
woman is
it.
doing.
But yeah, so I started thinking every day, sitting at my desk, like I can do this.
Mm,
I had gotten a divorce and I was going through that life transition. And I said, you
mhm,
know what? This is the time to do it. I've changed one part of my life. Let me change another part of my life that's unfulfilling for me. So I went
yeah,
back to school and here we are, finally licensed and very happy that I made that decision to change careers.
that's what's
That is so
up.
dope.
It makes
So,
me.
what's your favorite thing?
Oh,
Oh,
no, I was going to ask something unrelated, well, kind of related. I'm sorry, Erica. But I thought it was interesting that you said that you got a divorce and like you were like, you know what? It's time for me to make other changes. Is that something that you see a
Mhm.
lot with your clients?
Yeah, I tend to see people that are, especially when I have couples that come into my office, one or one or both of the individuals in the partnership are going through some sort of life transition, whether it's
Mm,
physically or career wise or with a family member, things of that nature. And they tend to start evaluating other parts of their lives. Because if you think about it, when one thing goes wrong, it messes everything else up too.
yeah.
And so you start
hmm
thinking about the other parts of your life that you want to correct when you get one part right. Like,
Hmm.
hey, you know what? I
I did
fixed
so well
this.
in this part.
Yeah,
How can
let's
I? Yeah.
exactly. And so a lot
Yeah.
of things will come up in the session not specifically relating to the one thing that they decided to come to therapy about.
Wow.
Yeah. I found that it was very helpful as I went through my divorce and couples therapy to also invest as much time in just me
Right.
because you're looking at the whole, but you also need to look at that part of the whole. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to do the
Yes,
same
yes.
thing. I decided, hey, what's going on with me? Why do I attract certain people into my life?
Mm.
And what type of person do I want to attract in my life in the future? And I it took some time, but I got there.
cool. So, as I was going to say, what's your favorite thing about your work?
I would say when one of my clients verbalizes to me that they've had some change in a
Hmm.
positive way. And so when I recognize, sometimes I recognize that in them before they do, or vice versa. I might think that I'm not helping them, or they're just coming in every day and we're not getting anywhere. And all of a sudden they'll say, you know what, when after we had this session, I noticed this change.
Hmm.
And that, when I hear that, it makes me feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. This is my life's purpose, and this is what I worked so hard to do to help other people live the life that they want to live.
Word. So we talk about therapy a lot on this show, not just on the therapist on the episodes where we talk to therapists.
Well, that's
Um,
good to hear.
yeah, it's like every episode. Like one of our missions is to help Black women, femmes, and our gender nonconforming family like connect with mental health help because I think we all need it for various things.
Yeah.
But we know that there's still a lot of folks who are just resistant to it. Why do you think that some folks refuse to engage with therapy? Especially, I guess, in
Um,
particular, Black folks.
yeah, and particularly in our community, that's another reason I have to add that to why I wanted to become a therapist. Uh, in our communities, we still have that stigma of you're crazy if you go to a therapist, or why are you telling a stranger your business? There's another side of it. Let me repeat what I just said. That you're telling a stranger your business. We tend to keep family problems and personal problems to ourselves. That's
Yeah, we
just
don't air
something
dirty
that we
laundry.
Right. Don't air your dirty laundry. So we aren't in the habit of going to a stranger, so to say, to talk about the problems and issues that we're having in our relationships, in the workplace, with our families. And we keep that to ourselves. And that further makes the dysfunction even worse than what it already is.
Right. Because
Mhm.
you're isolating yourself, right? And trying to deal with things on your
Exactly.
own. And I feel like isolation can only make things worse.
And so I've another reason why I became a therapist is because we don't have as many Black therapists as other races, and particularly white therapists. And I think it's very important that Black people are able to go to Black therapists.
Mhm.
When you
Mhm.
can't identify with the struggle or with the things that we face on a daily basis, it's hard to have empathy, which all therapists must have in a session, to understand what that person is faced with, and the way it actually relates to the issue they're having.
Right.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So on a turn on, we like to bust myths, be it about sex or gender roles, whatever. So what's a myth about therapy that you want to bust?
A myth about therapy. Let's see. Well, I guess the main one is we're not advice givers. We're
Mm,
not supposed to be giving you advice about what to do with your life. If a therapist is giving you advice and telling you what to do, you need to run. You need to find a new therapist. That
word.
is not the position that we're in. Yes, we can be in a position of being an expert on a topic because that's what maybe we got training in, a specific topic, but we are not the expert of your life.
Mm,
You are the expert of your life. Only you can help fix the issues that are going on in your life. We're here as a catalyst for that change for you, or to help you and educate you on certain things that you may not be aware of, as far as emotional ties and bonds, what we might be talking about today, and the way our the way we grow up and the way we are raised in our families may affect our lives as adults today.
word. Even then, when we want them to tell us, I've definitely said to my therapist, just tell me. Just tell me what
Hmm.
I should do in this
Yeah.
situation.
And
And she'd be like,
what does she say?
she say, bitch, you know I'm
She
not
rolls her
supposed to do that.
eyes and says, "You know what you need to do."
No, no, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm not going to tell you what to do. You have to figure that out. And now we can talk about, okay, what if you do this? And what
Mhm.
if you do that? And we can weigh the pros and cons about what you think might happen if you make a certain decision on what to do regarding a situation that you may be in.
Right. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
I think also that is why, I mean, so my therapist always says, my goal is to have you not come to me anymore.
Right.
You know,
Make
my goal
myself
Mhm.
is to,
obsolete.
yeah, make me obsolete. And so I think there's so much a part of that journey in figuring out the what to do or how to respond,
Mhm.
which is really the work and what you're coming there for, to kind of
Mhm.
train your brain and your psyche on how to come to these answers.
Yeah,
So,
Right.
that was a perfect way to say that. Train your brain. A lot of times, that's what you're doing when you recognize there's something that you want to change, because our
mhm,
brains were meant to help us survive. It's helped us live and make it this far in the world from
Mhm.
hundreds and thousands of years ago. And so we have to retrain our brain to not respond to things that have caused trauma to us in the past.
mhm.
That's the whole word. And it's actually a really good transition because
Hmm.
we asked you on because we read a book last week called Fire Baptized, and it features a couple and a pair of childhood friends who get close in the wake of traumatic events. And we figured that this was a really good opportunity for us to talk about trauma bonds and the different types of trauma
Hmm.
bonds and how they can form. But first, can you tell our listeners what trauma bonds are?
Okay, trauma bonding is the misuse of emotions to entangle another person. So if you think about all the emotions that are involved when you meet somebody and there's an attraction and you begin a relationship, we talk about fear, excitement, and sexual feelings, and even the physiology of sexuality in a relationship. When a person misuses those feelings, they become entangled in a relationship and it creates a trauma bond. And this usually happens in abusive relationships.
So, what are some signs that a relationship is held together by
Well,
trauma?
I would say when you notice yourself that something isn't right, but you can't seem to um, remove yourself from the situation. Like there's this feeling, okay, so I know this isn't right. Or maybe you had a friend tell you and you agree with it. When, let's see, when you want to leave, but you can't. That's a good
Mm.
sign. You wanna leave because you know there's something wrong, you're being abused, or whether it's physically or emotionally, and you try to leave and you can't. There's this feeling of addiction there. So, not you when we think about addiction, we think about drugs, but you can actually become addicted to a person. I don't know if you've ever heard the term love
Okay.
addict, right? So you become
Mhm.
addicted to that person because you're feeling all of those feelings that you want to feel in your brain, that fear and excitement I talked about in a relationship, and all those feel good feelings that get our blood moving. We get addicted to that feeling. And so there's an inconsistency. This is another way to tell in the relationship. There's inconsistent with the amount of feel good feelings in the relationship, and you hold on to that. That's part of the reason why you can't let go.
Oh, because 'cause you're, like, chasing
And
the
that's
good
that
times, the
addict type
Checking the high,
behavior.
yeah.
You're chasing the good times
Mhm.
and those feel good feelings, and they're there, but very inconsistently, just enough to keep you there and wanting to hold on to what you used to feel or what you feel every now and then.
Yeah,
Girl,
I've been there.
could you quit talking? Like,
Yeah.
shut up. Why
Yeah,
you
I
so
mean, a lot
loud?
of us, quite a few people. I mean, I would probably say the majority of people have been in some type of relationship where they feel that way.
It's interesting too because I'm thinking about, and tell me if this is not trauma bonding, but when you have been through, well, two different things I'm gonna describe. One, when you form a relationship with someone because you both have a history of trauma and that brings you together. And then also when you've gone through a lot of things with someone and it feels like you need to
Hmm.
stay together because y'all helped each other through this tough
Yeah,
time. Are
that
those also types of
that
trauma
those are trauma
bonds?
bonds too, and specifically because that rough time, you always see in the movies that there's like some tragedy or there's Yes,
that brings
excitement, and they
people
end up
together.
falling in love, trying to get away from the killer or all that, whatever, right? We think about the movies we see.
Mhm.
Those are trauma bonds too, and those are created from that fear and excitement, just like I was explaining in the
Mm.
beginning. So you get that rush of emotion, and it mimics the feeling of being in love.
And you talked about some of the signs of it, like, how can this impact your relationship, like, long term if you're bound together, whether it's trauma bonds in the form of an abusive relationship or trauma bonds because are chasing that
Mhm.
high that comes with, having made it through this tough time together. How can that impact your relationship
Well,
in the
it can
long term?
impact in the long term because that's not something that can be sustained. So if the
Mm,
relationship was brought on because of a tragedy, and you guys were feeling this fear and excitement, and you were clinging to each other to survive. Remember, you got to keep bringing the brain back into this. Our brains help us to survive,
mm,
so we cling to each other to survive this tragedy. So that tragic moment isn't always going to be there. So some people that end up creating a bond during moments like that find that once things have finally died down, that feeling isn't there any longer. So now feelings of
mm.
confusion start to set in because now we're in reality.
So I think we're talking a lot about unhealthy trauma bonds, and I'm wondering two things. One, are there such things as healthy trauma bonds? And two, do we have, and this kind of comes hand in hand, do we have to cut off those relationships that are built upon trauma
Well,
bonds?
initially the term trauma bond was not um, developed based on something healthy. The
Mm,
term was brought about because it is the creation of a relationship built on the misuse of emotions. So there's
So like
bingo.
abusive
So even
relationships.
though
Yeah.
a bond can be established, a relationship can be established through trauma, meaning two people can be experiencing a similar trauma, it's still unhealthy use of the emotions that are being experienced in the moment.
mm.
So I'm clinging to you.
Wow.
I need you to survive this moment. Instead of managing the emotion
Right.
yourself, you're clinging to the other person, or you guys are clinging to each other. Not saying that that's wrong, because we do have situations where, but keep in mind, if you create a partnership before the tragedy, it's okay because you already have a healthy foundation for the partnership in the beginning.
I wonder if kind of expanding or complicating that question. So like I grew up in a situation with family members who were drug addicted, and like that impacted the way that I grew up and the way that I move through the
Mm-hmm.
world now. I have friends who grew up in similar situations, and it's kind of how we came together because we understood those things about each other. Is that an inherently negative thing? Is it negative if it only stays at that level and you don't deepen your relationship around other parameters? Like what does that, I guess,
Well, I
clinically
think
look
what
like?
you're describing is, I guess it can mimic trauma bonding, but what you're describing is creating a relationship based on commonalities in your past. And it only becomes
Mm,
unhealthy if you use each other in an unhealthy way in the relationship. So remember, the
got it.
term trauma bonding was developed to be negative based on its definition. But if you create a
Mhm.
relationship due to a mutual experience, that doesn't become unhealthy unless you guys are mistreating each other based on those emotions. Right? So I'm
Gotcha.
Okay.
taking and
That
pulling
makes
from you because
sense.
I need this excitement and fear and understanding because you've been there before, and then you do the same. So basically using each other, like sucking each other dry.
So question, we know that Black folks in the United States experience PTSD at higher rates than any other
Mhm.
demographic group in the country, which means that there's a lot of us who are either dealing with or not dealing with trauma. To that end, it probably, I would imagine, especially since you just said that a lot of people who you come across have experienced this, make it difficult for us to create intimate relationships with people who also don't have
Hmm.
trauma. So, how can we make sure that we're keeping our relationships healthy when everybody's walking around
That
with
is a
past trauma?
great question. And another reason why I'm so happy that you guys talk about therapy and are advocates for people of color, Black people especially, to seek out therapy, because that is the only way that we can overcome and start to establish healthier relationships with each other as we go along our lives meeting people. Because one thing to think about in trauma bonding, specifically when it comes to what you've experienced in your past and especially through your childhood, is that there's usually something that has gone wrong with one or both parents or somebody in your family that has created this emotional uh, void, so to say, that you either are aware of and you're not. And so when we attract most often those people that we create these trauma bonds with and get in abusive relationships with, it's because we're really trying to fill that void and get a do-over, if that makes sense. So this is somebody that mimics a past experience,
Wow,
and
yeah.
I did not get what I needed in that moment. Let me try again in this moment. And it's really a subconscious type of behavior that happens. And you can realize it through therapy, through discussion, talking about the way you grew up, your relationship with your parents or other guardians or family members that were close to you growing up, and even past relationships that you had early on in adolescence and early adulthood that may be a contributor to why you continue to find yourself in abusive type relationships. Thank you guys for having me. I
Thank you
enjoyed
so
it.
much for joining us today, Chloe. It was great.
This episode was produced by us, Erica and Kenria, and edited by Ballistic. The theme song is from Brazy. First, please leave a review in your favorite podcast listening app. For real, we want to hear from y'all. Send your book recommendations and all the burning sex and related questions you want us to answer to theturnonpodcast@gmail.com. And please subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast app. Follow us on Twitter at The Turn On Pod and Instagram at The Turn On Podcast. And find links to books, transcripts, guest info, and other fun stuff at theturnonpodcast.com. Bye!